And here's an orangutan. Here he's gone and caught the fish that he was looking for. Right? We also start seeing them use tools to try and catch the fish. We see them eating more actively rather than just testing. And you see them much more social about it, so everybody's starting to get into the game. For the kinds of tools, here's an orangutan poking into a pond where there was fish. Why, we don't quite know, but possibly to scare the fish out of their hiding places at the bottom of the water. Here's another one poking in as well, and in this case, I don't know if you can see it, these are walking fish. This is a fish that's actually jumped out of the water, presumably in response to having a stick stuck in the water nearby. So in this case, the agitation or the poking was apparently effective in getting the fish to show itself. And here's somebody doing a sort of a squiggle or agitate water that may also work to get the fish out of the water. So here we have possibly 3 different kinds of tool use, all with a stick, but 3 different ways of using a stick to try and catch fish. Okay? So what can we say about their fishing with tools? Well, clearly they learned it. It's absolutely impossible that this is genetically pre-programmed because orangutans don't eat fish. This is the only place in the world that anybody has ever seen orangutans eat fish, so this is not part of their normal repertoire. It's creative. They had to invent it from nothing, and I think, or I hope you could see that there looked to be some progression over time. They started out, they just found them by luck, you explore them a little bit, and then they developed or they improved their techniques over time as they got to know more about what they were doing. And a lot of this was possible because of the opportunities. It wasn't that they just did this out of the blue. It was partly the seasonality that helped them. It was the drying out of the dry season situation that helped, where fish would get caught in ponds. So there was some new thing that was, if you like, put in front of them, dropped in front of them as something to investigate. They started to explore and then figured out what they could do with it. So 2 things then, just to try and finish off here. I was talking about orangutans' tools and intelligence to start with. So first of all, I would certainly like to make the claim, and I hope you would be convinced, that the tools that they use have to be learned. Can't be much else than that. From the range of stuff I showed you now, and I could do a lot more, they look to be flexible. They look like there's a lot of variety in the things they can do. They're creative. They've come up with some things that aren't reported anywhere else. They're quite diverse. And again, I haven't shown you the half of it. And some of them are very complex, so they're putting multiple tools together to solve problems. They can be doing them in sequence and all sorts of things like that. If we compare them to other primates, remember with orangutans, they looked like the dullards of the great apes. So this was a comparison in the recent animal tool use book that shows you some other primates, other monkeys and apes that are important. A capuchin monkey, did any of you know those? Yeah, they're the smartest of the monkeys. They're like the apes of the New World. They're marvelous tool users as well. Gibbons are also apes, but they're small apes, not the big ones. And then we have all 4 great apes. And what I would like to point out to you is where orangutans sit now. There's the number of different tool types like reachers and wipers and whatnot. Orangutans are right up with chimpanzees as having the most types of tools in the wild. And we're one better in captivity. So instead of being the dullards of the great ape tool users, orangutans are some of the most complex and most sophisticated. So it certainly changes the picture of what they're like when you look farther, and again, when you look using a different set of rules in terms of what counts. The human origins bit, this one I'm very fond of. I don't know whether any of you have run across any of this recently, but you know, omega-3 fatty acids, yeah, you're supposed to eat them, brain food, stuff like that, yeah. Turns out that the best source, or one of the best sources of omega-3 fatty acids are aquatic fauna, so shellfish and regular fish. It also turns out that the human brain does not grow or develop normally from infancy unless it has enough of these omega-3 fatty acids, and you have to get them through your diet. You can't create them through your own metabolism. They have to be taken in. So the argument is, how could we have evolved the large brain that we have now that requires these kinds of nutrients during infancy unless these foods were widely available and commonly eaten in our evolutionary history, so several million years back? How could you design something that needed these fuels unless the fuels were there in the first place? So people have then tried to reconstruct how they think it's possible that our human ancestors discovered fish and aquatic fauna as foods. So who did it, how many million years ago, and what was probably going on? And they came up with a picture that looks something like this. The very first hominins, that is, the creatures that look like they are exclusively in the human lineage, they're not of the great apes, so they're probably bipeds, they're doing things that other great apes aren't doing. They start to appear about 7.2 million years ago. No evidence that they were eating fish or other aquatic fauna, but they lived near water, so could be. The Australopithecines, from about 4.4 to 2.4 million years ago, the proposition is that with dry seasons showing up, we probably had to hang around at lake margins. We were probably eating aquatic plants, and we might inadvertently have eaten some aquatic fauna like little tiny shellfish or little other fish that are stuck on the plants. Did it by mistake, but that could have gotten us the taste. And that over the next couple of million years, we probably then could have started scavenging dead fish that were on beaches, hand catching them, and probably it would be carp again. It would probably be the catfish because they're slow moving and easy to get hold of. Homo then, our own genus, from about 2.4 million years ago, that's where you get evidence of deliberate fishing, like going out and trying to find the fish. And one of the things they find is the first evidence they have of using tools. What they do is they find fish bones with marks on them that must have been made by tools, and they find, I think, sometimes tools that are potential causes of the marks. And again, it's carp, it's the catfish again. The story then is that this was a long and slow process to discover fish and build it into our diet. It took a whole series of different hominin species to do it, starting with the earliest and moving up to Homo, which had a much bigger brain. Time period involved something like 5 million years. And brains, you had to have brains, especially for the tools. You needed brains that were over about 800 grams to be able to do it. So you needed to be really smart to build this tool bit in. So now we look at what the orangutans did. And what we had was a ragtag bunch of 30 or 40 juveniles and adolescents who did the whole thing in 4 or 5 years. And they did it with brains that are probably no more than 300 to 400 grams, because that's the size of an adult orangutan brain. So the story is the whole scenario that you get with humans looks very dragged out and very difficult, but orangutans, who are much less intellectually capable than humans, pulled it off like it was a piece of cake, just a bunch of kids fooling around. So since I like orangutans, as you can imagine, I'm very fond of that story. Just in conclusion then, what can I say about orangutan tools? Well, they have a very rich repertoire of tools if you use the revised definition and if you look a little bit more carefully at what they do. So they're not the dullards and the no-tool users that we thought. In terms of intelligence, they show high intelligence, especially when you start seeing them combining tools and you look at the ways they vary a basic pattern to make it much richer. They push the envelope. What they're doing is the same kind of thing that we do as humans when we innovate. We keep pushing the envelope. We just keep inching things ahead. You try a little bit more and a little bit more. They maybe can't make as big jumps as we can, but they're doing the same kind of thing. The changes that they make are just beyond their current skills, and they're cumulative, so you can make very complex things by making a number of changes. But it's all kind of like a jigsaw puzzle. A whole bunch of pieces have to fit to make that happen, and that's probably why the experimental studies don't work very well, is people don't have the bits and pieces worked out together. Because it's like humans, you have to have the readiness in the individual at the same time the opportunity is there. You know, no use trying to teach a grade 2 kid calculus. It ain't going to happen. They're not ready for it. What you have to do is take somebody who's ready and then give them the calculus, and then it'll probably go. So you need the combination of individual fit with the opportunities to make this all work, and at least with this fishing thing with orangutans, that appears to be what happened. In terms of human origins, I think one of the things you can see out of this, other than getting a laugh at humans for being so slow when orangutans are so quick, is that you can see where it is that great apes can help us understand things about our own history over the long term. One of the things about fossil record, which is typically what we use a lot when we're looking at human origins, is it doesn't record a lot of information. If you notice, the kinds of tools that orangutans and chimpanzees are using are typically made out of leaves or sticks, and they don't fossilize. So those kinds of tools could have been used much before we got to the point of using stone tools, but we'd have no record of them in the fossil record. So that's probably what happened in this case. The kinds of things that orangutans are doing now are things that probably could have been done by the very earliest hominins, but we don't have the evidence because the tools that they would have used would not be recorded in the fossil record. So, thank you very much. And I would, as my parting shot, you know the little phrase carpe diem? I believe it is York University's motto. Yeah. I would like to point out that that obviously means seize that carp. Thank you very much.